Well, hello, welcome. I'm glad that you're here with us as we continue our chronological read through of the Bible. Well, today is the first of 4 days that we're going to spend reading the book of Daniel. After years and years of warning, which we've been reading about, God finally executes his judgment on an unrepentant Judah. They become subject to the Babylonians, and King Nebuchadnezzar brings back the brightest and the best of her youth to Babylon to be trained and to serve him. With the hand of the Lord upon him, Daniel becomes foremost among all of these, even foremost among all of the Chaldeans, save the king himself. Through Daniel, God makes his presence among his people known, even when they are in exile. As he has promised, God never leaves nor forsakes his people. The book of Daniel is both engaging and difficult at the same time. It's written to comfort those in well, I guess you might say the fiery furnace of the Babylonian exile. And it's written to assure us who come later into our trials and tribulations as well. God prospers Daniel and he prospers his people, even in a country that's hostile to them and to their faith. Roughly the first half of the book of Daniel is well, it's narrative about how God is with Daniel, how he's with his associates, in particular Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how God works through them, even in the greatest of dangers, to show his power, his might, and his absolute authority over everything. The second, or well, roughly the second half of the book, records various visions that Daniel is given to depict the establishment of God's kingdom and and also the time and the life for Israel, for Judah after Babylon. Actually, for all of us after Babylon. Now, there's a definite structure to the book. Today, we're going to read the prologue in chapter 1, which tells us from the very beginning, which tells us how from the very beginning Daniel and three of his fellow Jews dedicated themselves to the Lord, really at all cost, and then how God was with them. In chapter 2, we read of a dream Nebuchadnezzar has of four kingdoms and God's kingdom. And in chapter 7, we'll read of a vision that Daniel has of four kingdoms and the kingdom of God. In chapter 3, we'll read how God saves his servants from the fiery furnace of Nebuchadnezzar. And in chapter 6, how God saves Daniel from the lion's den of Darius. In chapter 4, we're going to read of God's judgment on Nebuchadnezzar. And in chapter 5, we read of God's judgment on Belshazzar. The book then closes with a chapter detailing post Babylonian kingdoms. Then there's a chapter that speaks of restored Jerusalem. And finally, there are three chapters, 10, 11, and 12, with further details about the past post Babylonian kingdoms. What you read today, you're likely going to be familiar with because these are accounts that are taught, well, they've been taught to us ever since Sunday school. As you read them, remember that God is with his people, even with the government, even when the government that they are living under is hostile to God, his ways, and those who follow him. Remember, God is always present among his people, and he has already won the victory over sin and death and the power of the devil. That's the worst that anyone can throw at us here on earth. He's already won that victory through the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. And that Jesus, this same Jesus, has ascended to the right of the Father, where he rules all things for the good of his church, and from whence he will one day return and establish the new heavens and the new earth, where we will live where he will live with his people forever, in peace, in joy, and in perfect love. What a day that will be. Well, may God be with you and bless you as you begin your reading of this new book. Um, I pray that you enjoy it, and I also pray that our time together helps you to understand the things that are going on, to maybe put a few things together that may have troubled you before. I look forward to gathering with you again the next day as we continue our reading in Daniel.